Today, we're diving into a book that pretty much turned the world of competitive sports on its head. It's Brad Gilbert's Winning Ugly. Now, this is a masterclass in mental warfare, and it's built on a really powerful idea. The player with the prettiest game doesn't always win. In fact, a lot of the time, they lose to someone who's just plain smarter. So, let's get into it.
So, get this. This is a real quote someone actually said about Brad Gilbert while watching him play a professional match. And you know what? They weren't totally wrong. Gilbert's style was unorthodox. It was clunky. Some people definitely called it ugly. He just didn't have those classic, beautiful strokes his rivals had. And yet, he kept winning and winning, which created this incredible puzzle.
So how did our caveman do on the pro circuit? Well, he pulled in over $5 million in prize money and shot up to number 4 in the entire world. As Gilbert himself loved to say, the bank doesn't think I'm ugly. Which really makes you wonder, right? How on earth did he consistently beat players who were, on paper, way more talented? And this right here is the absolute core of Gilbert's entire philosophy. He realized that while most players are just obsessed with perfecting their physical game, their technique, the fastest, biggest improvements you can make don't come from your racket. They come from your mind. Okay, so let's get into what he calls the ugly truth. And the truth is this: winning isn't always about who has the most raw talent. It's about who builds the smarter mental framework, a system that lets you play to your strengths and, more importantly, attack your opponent's weaknesses.
Gilbert's promise is really simple. He's saying, look, if you put as much energy into your strategy and your mental game as you do into just hitting the ball, you will start beating people who are supposed to beat you. So how do you actually do that?
The very first pillar of this whole system is what Gilbert calls the match before the match. His whole argument is that most of us lose the game before we even step onto the court. And it's all because of one simple failure. We just don't prepare our minds.
So what does that prep actually look like? Well, it's a mental checklist. Before a match, Gilbert would break down his opponent systematically. What are their go-to patterns? What are their best shots, their worst? And critically, how do they act when they're under pressure? He'd even look at his own past mistakes against them. He wasn't just warming up his body, he was building a full-on psychological profile.
And all that analysis boils down to a really simple 2-part game plan. First question, what do I want to make happen? That's your offense, right? Forcing them to play your game. And the second question, what do I want to prevent from happening? And that's your defense, making sure they can't play their game, all right?
So once the match actually starts, your mission is to use that plan to find the combination to your opponent's lock. See, every single player has a game that can be cracked open if you just know the right numbers to dial, especially when the pressure starts to build. The key to finding that combination is a question Gilbert says you have to ask yourself over and over again. Who's doing what to whom? Now, this means you have to look past the scoreboard. It's not just about who won the point. You have to understand why. Are they picking on your backhand? Are you making dumb mistakes? The answer to that question, that's the combination to the lock.
Let's look at a legendary example of this in action. Gilbert is up against the powerhouse Boris Becker, a guy with maybe the best forehand in the world at the time. Now, most players would run from that forehand, right? Avoid it at all costs. Gilbert? He did the exact opposite. Gilbert's pre-match homework gave him this one crucial insight. Yeah, Becker's forehand was his weapon, but he got really frustrated when it wasn't working perfectly. It was the anchor for his entire mental game. So Gilbert's plan was wild. He decided to deliberately hit the ball to Becker's forehand. Not to try and win the point, but to make him miss, to get him angry, and to make that big, strong anchor start to wobble. And you know what? It worked. Even when Gilbert was down, almost out of the match, he didn't panic. He just stuck to the plan. He had this mental roadmap that kept telling him, nope, there's still a way to win, even when the score was screaming that he was going to lose. And the result? It was an absolute mental collapse from Becker. In that final set, Gilbert steamrolled him 6-1 in just 10 minutes. It wasn't Becker's body that failed him. It was his mind. Gilbert had found the combination, and he didn't just open the lock,
He blew the whole door off. This brings us to the third and maybe the most subtle pillar, mastering the hidden moments. Gilbert figured out that in any competition, there are these critical little moments and opportunities that almost everybody misses. They're basically asleep at the wheel. And this is where the mental battle is really won or lost. You see, an average player, they only feel the pressure on the obvious points, game point, set point, match point. But the ugly winner? They know the truly decisive moment, the one that really matters, happens before all that. Gilbert calls this the setup point. It's not the point that wins the game. It's the point that gets you to game point. Think about a score like 30-30. For most of us, that's just another point. But for Gilbert, this is a huge, massive swing moment with an incredible reward if you win it.
The psychology here is just so powerful. I mean, look at the math. If you win that point at 30-30, you are now just one single point away from winning the game. But your opponent, suddenly they're 3 long points away. With one single shot, you've grabbed all the psychological momentum and dumped a mountain of pressure right on their shoulders.
So how do you play these crucial setup points? Gilbert has this brilliant metaphor. You play like a boa constrictor. A boa doesn't go for one big, flashy takedown. No, it just applies constant, steady pressure. Every time the prey breathes out, the boa just tightens its grip a little bit more, and soon the prey just suffocates. You don't go for the amazing shot. You play smart, you play solid, and you let your opponent make the fatal mistake.
So, when you put it all together, the Winning Ugly playbook is a really clear 3-step mental process. Number 1, do your homework before you even show up. Number 2, constantly ask who's doing what to whom so you can find that combination lock. And number 3, master those hidden moments, like the setup point, by applying that steady, suffocating pressure. Ultimately, the message here is so empowering. Gilbert truly believed that in almost any contest, victory is rarely decided by pure talent. He's saying that in that giant 90% of matchups that are pretty evenly balanced, there's always a way to win. You just have to be smart enough to find it. And that really brings this whole idea back to us, doesn't it? The question Winning Ugly forces us to ask is this. In our own lives, our careers, our negotiations, our personal challenges, where are we so focused on playing with pretty strokes when what we really need to do is just figure out how to win ugly?